able to watch and observe these hearings. So that is going now. I'm going to start by reading through our hearing script. This basically just covers the procedure for the hearing, and then we'll jump right into it. This is the January 5th, 2022 session of the Zoning Hearing Examiner docket. My name is David Sturkey. I'm the Zoning Hearing Examiner for the City of Cincinnati, and I will preside over this hearing. The case before us today is case number ZH20210171. The purpose of this hearing is to allow applicants and opposing parties to testify and to offer and refute evidence and testimony. This hearing will follow the rules found in the zoning code and the supplemental rules of the Zoning Hearing Examiner. All testimony and evidence that an applicant or any opposing party wishes to offer must be presented at this hearing, unless a party has submitted evidence or testimony in the form of writing prior to this hearing. The hearing will proceed as follows. The applicant, the applicant's attorney, or the applicant's agent will first present the applicant's case. The public will then have an opportunity to speak after the applicant has presented its case. If the applicant is represented by an attorney, the applicant's attorney may cross-examine any person who has testified at this hearing. If a party of record is represented by an attorney, the attorney for the party of record may present witnesses after the applicant has presented its case and may cross-examine any person who has testified at this hearing. In the event that any party testifies or offers argument in opposition to this application, the applicant shall have an opportunity to rebut that testimony and or argument offered in opposition. After the applicant has been given an opportunity to rebut any testimony or argument, any attorney for a party of record may make a closing statement. Finally, the applicant will have an opportunity to make a closing statement. After all presentations have been made, I will close the hearing. Decisions may be expected within 2 weeks. So let me just try and quickly summarize that. I think we have Dewey's that is represented by an attorney. So Mr. Tepe, you'll have an opportunity to sort of present this case. I'm pretty liberal in terms of how I allow the applicants to orient their case and their testimony. So if you want to sort of directly examine some of the people that are here in support of this project, then you're welcome to do that. If you'd just like to make an argument and then let each person sort of provide their own testimony on their own, you can do that as well. After that is complete, that presentation, I'll then give everyone from the public an opportunity to provide any testimony or tell me anything about this project that they would like me to hear. I will caution you that according to the rules, this is the only time that you will be able to comment on this. So this is sort of one bite at the apple for anyone from the public who's not represented by an attorney here today. We will then go back to Mr. Tepe. Mr. Tepe, you'll have an opportunity to cross-examine anyone who has testified at this hearing if you would like. After that, you'll have an opportunity to make any closing statements, or anyone else on the applicant side can make any closing statements. I'll then close the hearing and that'll be it. And I'll keep us on track here, but just wanted to make sure that was clear for everyone. I may limit or exclude any testimony that I deem irrelevant or outside the scope of the application being considered. I may interrupt any speaker to ask questions or to make any comments. I may also refuse to consider hearsay testimony or documents. That's generally evidence you want to introduce that consists of statements made by someone who's not present at this hearing. In the event of any technical difficulties with our video conferencing technology here, I'll do my best to troubleshoot those on the fly, but to the extent there's something that some defect that prevents us from meaningfully going forward with this hearing, I may continue or postpone the hearing at my discretion. Okay. The final thing I need to do before we start with the applicant's case is swear in all of our witnesses. So if you are here today to provide testimony, to make any comments, to ask any questions, to do anything other than just strictly observe and watch this hearing, then you need to be sworn in. If you're not sure whether you're going to testify, I can always swear you in midway through the hearing. But if you know you want to say something, I'd like to swear all of those people in right now collectively. So if that is you, if you could make sure you take yourself off mute. I need everyone to raise their right hand, and I need everyone to answer out loud. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes,
I do.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, Mr. Tepe, you do not need to be sworn as an attorney here today. Okay, Mr. Tepe, unless you have any questions, the floor is yours.
thank you very much. I have the pleasure to represent Dewey's Pizza here today in this request for a special exception. With me are Chuck Lipp, who you became familiar with at the introduction, is the president of Dewey's Pizza, and Scott Rogers, the architect. We also have some construction related help if we need any questions that may come up. Dewey's has under contract an office building located at 3061 Madison Road. It's about 9,700 square feet. It's a two-story office building that has 6 surface parking lots, 6 surface parking spaces. Dewey's is hoping to move their corporate offices from Norwood back into the city. And this is a special location for them because the Oakley restaurant is their store number one, where everything started. This building was also developed at a time when the zoning was a bit different. What's different now is that in order to utilize parking spaces that are not located on site, you have to covet them or you have to restrict them. That was not the case back when this building was built. So that's sort of what complicates things. I'd like to keep in mind that, and Chris Conan, who is the owner of the building, can buttress this if he speaks, is this property has been vacant. It's been vacant for a while, and I think the large reason for that is because of the parking. Again, there's only 6 surface parking spots, and in order to utilize this property as an office building, as Dewey's wants to, you need 24 spaces. But what's fortunate here is Dewey's is in a position, and I don't think that there's anybody else that would be in the same position, that owns property in close proximity with excess parking. There's not a whole lot of excess parking in Oakley Square, nor is there in Mount Lookout or Hyde Park Square. So this is very fortunate. They have, as you see some of the drawings, where their original location is, they own that building. They have roughly 19 surplus spots. So if you take the 6 plus the 19 surface, that gets us there. So I then ask you, well, why are we here? We're here because some of those surface spots that are located down the street that they want to utilize are located more than 600 feet from the subject property. Not all of them, just some of them are located more than 600 feet from the subject property. They're roughly 625 feet. So if you really want to pace it out, it's roughly 12 paces too far from where their subject property is. As I noted earlier, this is a unique position and a unique buyer because they have excess parking that they can utilize. This is not a situation where a user is coming in to say, hey, there isn't any parking. There's only 6 spaces on the subject property. So therefore, we'd like to have a significant variance to use the property without the required number of parking spaces. That's not the case. I want to be clear. What the case is they have the parking, some of which is just 25 feet a little further than what it needs to be. And the people that will be inconvenienced, if you will, and I don't think it's an inconvenience at all to walk 12 extra steps, are going to be their employees. This is going to be their corporate office, their C-suite. And so they're in it. They're going to be the owners of the building, and any additional walk that they may have to go from that parking lot to their office, they're already all in because they're employees of the company. And this is where the brains of that great restaurant organization are going to be located. And I guess you'll also hear in a minute from Chuck, and you'll hear from Scott. What's great about this is that the uses of the 2 buildings, the office building and the restaurant, are not at the same time. You have an office use by day, you have a restaurant use by night. So it's not like we're going to be packing a bunch of people in there at the same time. To the contrary, they're very complementary in their time slots. So we think that this is really a very unique situation to take a building that, quite frankly, has been dark. It's been a little bit of a frown on that great strip of the street. Through no efforts of the owner, they've been trying to sell this property for a long time, but the parking has really been the issue. We can lighten up this area. We can get some activity. We can get some tax earners or taxpayers back into the city there. And we just really look forward to hopefully receiving your positive vote on this, Mr. Hearing Examiner, and approve this special exception. I do note that Wes did a really nice job in the staff report walking through this thing. And I will tell you that all of the factors that you are to consider in the zoning code all militate in favor of granting this special exception for purposes of it's going to increase property values because you're not going to have a dark building. You're going to bring in some additional taxpayers into the city. It's not going to have any type of adverse effect on anything else. In fact, it's only going to have nothing but positive impact on Oakley Square and as well as the area. So I've probably gone on too much, and I will utilize your framework, David, by probably going the latter route by introducing Scott here, who will probably just kind of give a little bit of a narrative, if you will, rather than a direct examination format, if that's okay.
Sure, absolutely. And I'll have questions as we go along, and maybe some at the end as well. Let me just make sure, I'm sort of table setting this right and I understand exactly the request. There's a vacant building at 3061 that's owned by Mr. Conan that he would like to lease for office space or sell for office space to Dewey's, and Dewey's would like to rely on their existing parking lot at their restaurant location to satisfy the parking requirements, and that a portion of those parking spaces are outside of the 600 feet requirement.
I think you summed it up correctly. I'd like to add, though, that they would like to utilize the excess parking that they have at their restaurant location for use for this office building. That building that they are down there at 3010, 3012, 3014, and 3020 Madison all have enough parking under the zoning. They just want to utilize additional spots, excess spots at that location for the office building.
Okay.
Scott, I believe I summed that up correctly.
I think you got it pretty well. The staff report is very thorough. We do have 6 spaces at the property, 24 required, 18 additional are needed. There's a small building near the Dewey's headquarters, a small brick building that has 6 spaces attached to it. That property is within the 600 feet. So 4 of those spaces would be tapped to make up the shortage. The building only requires 1 per zoning code, so we have an extra there. The remaining 14 spaces will be from the extra spaces at the 3-tenant building that includes the Dewey's Pizza Restaurant. Those spaces are on a property that is 25 feet too far technically to be included. 25 feet closer, we wouldn't be here. That's the only issue we have as far as the zoning review and zoning analysis and the total parking analysis. The existing lots have extra spaces. They are willing to be granted. They are owned by the same entity. The only variance we are asking for is the 25 feet. I would re-stress the idea that this is all employee parking. We are not going to be creating a situation where the general public is inconvenienced by the slight extra distance. The other thing I need to point out is that when you have a lot, a required amount of parking that is 25 or less, you are required to have 1 accessible parking space. And we have in the staff report, you can see on the site plan that we have allowed and provided for that accessible space as one of the spaces that is actually on the property. So that is convenient and meets that portion of the code. And the other aspect that is worth considering is the shared parking arrangement, the staggered time demand. You have peak demand for business of 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. Peak demand on restaurant tends to be 5 or later, and weekends. So the peak demands don't overlap. Yeah, there'll be a little bit at lunch and things like that, but the peak demands are set up very well for this sort of thing. The nice aspect of using 3061 as office space is that it reduces the demand from the previous retail use. The retail use would require more parking than the office use does. So this is moving that property in the most friendly way for the neighborhood.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Sturkey, I wanted to make sure as a point of order, because Dewey's is a first-class operator, they approached this request in this hearing in no different fashion. They did meet a couple of times with the Oakley Community Council, most recently as last night, and hopefully you had received a copy of the letter from the zoning chair indicating that the Oakley Community Council's support of what is before you today.
I did. I've received it and I've reviewed it.
Thank you.
Okay, a couple quick questions as we go here. How many, I know that the code requires, based on the square footage, a certain amount of parking, but how many people is Dewey's anticipating are actually going to be working inside the building?
So Chuck Lip here. Currently, we have a combination of total of about 17, but it's a combination of part-time and full-time. When I say part-time and full-time, some are still working from home, and we anticipate some of our HR staff still working from home, some of our marketing staff still working from home part of the week. So it's a total right now of 17 people.
Okay. And whoever on the applicant side can field this. I used to rent on Markbright back in the day, and I assume that the reason the 600 feet requirement is in place because employees will be tempted to try to park closer than the 600, than something beyond 600 feet. I know that there's street parking. I assume there's still street parking on Markbright and in other places. What's the argument that they wouldn't just do that and occupy that street parking space instead of utilizing the 625 foot away parking lot?
That's a good point, and I know Chuck will elaborate on this a little bit. This is a different situation where if you had a bar, for example, people in parking are kind of like water, right? They'll go to the closest and easiest place to go. The difference here is these are employees. They work for Chuck. And if Chuck says you will park here, I don't know, I usually listen to the boss. Chuck, I mean, hopefully I didn't mean to be so blunt about it, but it's that's going to be the directive, correct?
Yes, that's why we're doing it. Is, I've looked at, we've been in this camp of working on this building for almost a year now, and trying to come up with creative parking solutions and running into roadblocks of, hey, these need to be deeded spots, trying to purchase land, trying to do a lot of different things to ensure I want my team to have as easy as access as possible to getting to the building. The interesting thing is we have been officing downtown prior. So for the past 20 plus years, we've officed downtown. So there is in our building, we didn't have attached parking. So our team is already used to walking a little bit to work, and we paid for parking for them downtown. So it's not like we've had attached parking before.
Okay. And last question, then I'll let you all keep going. And sorry if I missed this, but did you explore other options that fall within the 600 feet? And or are there other options that fall within 600 feet?
We did explore other options, and we're continuing to explore other options, including leasing spaces, which doesn't work because nobody who's going to lease a space is going to deed a space. Purchasing land from an adjacent landowner, and that fell through. That turned into a much bigger purchase option than I was willing to go through. And there's another lot that is further down the street that was for sale, and I entertained purchasing that. It was probably more like, I think it was 800 feet from the site. So again, yes, I've talked to Dan Benny and Dave Beck, who own the law firm across the street. They have some space behind their building. I believe I talked to Mindy at one point about using some parking. Again, nobody is willing to deed space. And yes, there are people who are willing to maybe rent 1 or 2 spaces or allow for 4 spaces to park, but it's not going to be deeded parking. And that is the issue. And I'm sure Chris can attest to that as well, being the owner of the building and representing the owners of the building. And that's the problem with that location. So yes, I've explored in a year, I've probably explored 10 or 15 different options, and most of them are not going to even come close to satisfying. So this was a route that I became aware of, and then we really explored it. And we're like, well, it's pretty darn close, and it's really would work well for our team to be able to park there.
Sorry, I lied. I have one more question, but I'm going to go a little bit out over here. It's for the zoning plans examiner, Wes Menzel. Wes, are you with us? Wes, would there be any permitted use of this building without needing some sort of relief, assuming there's no parking within 600 feet?
The subject building,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
office building?
Is it? Let's assume there's no parking. What Mr. Lip just said is true. There's no parking anywhere within 600 feet. Would it be possible to occupy this building without
Let's
parking
see.
relief, without the same special exception?
The building is quite large given the neighborhood at 9,000 feet, and the zoning allows for a 2,000 square foot exemptions. They could occupy 2,000 square feet without any parking. And then the other uses, like retail or, restaurant require, let's see, retail requires, I think, 4 per 1,000 square feet. So yeah, they couldn't use up the whole building without getting some sort of parking accommodation somewhere else, given the size of the building.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Wes. Mr. Tepe, thanks for indulging me there.
Yeah.
I'll turn it back over to you or anyone else on the applicant side that would like to
No
provide.
worries. I don't want to belabor the point. I think it's fairly straightforward. We're talking about 12 paces to utilize the excess parking spaces that, again, Chuck brought up a really good point. People are willing to lease spaces all day long, but when you say, oh, by the way, the city requires that there be a covenant be put on there, I can understand why they get a little bit squeamish. I would too. This is such a unique circumstance where Dewey's has excess parking that they can restrict for their own benefit. And it doesn't harm anyone else other than utilize spaces that are excess than what's otherwise required by zoning. Chris Conan, I made a couple of comments early with respect to your ownership and the difficulty in trying to find a user and or buyer for this because of the parking. Do you think you could elaborate or maybe just kind of hit on a couple of those points if you can?
Yeah, we have been actively leasing. We've had 2 different real estate brokers actively leasing this property over the last 2.5 years that it's been vacant. And actually previous to that, we had about 9 months when we knew the previous tenant was going to move out where we were leasing it. I've had hundreds of people say that it's a really cool building and they want to move in there, but the parking doesn't meet their needs. I've had maybe 6 people in 2.5 years that have taken a hard look at it and couldn't get over the parking restriction. And Wes, you had mentioned 9. I think, and I may have it wrong, I've seen 12,000 square feet and I've seen 13,000 square feet, but whether you're looking at the county or looking at an appraisal, but we've got 13,000 square feet and really 5 parking spots plus the loading dock, which we can use as another parking spot, I believe. It just does not work at all. And starting to talk with Dewey's, it started to make a lot of sense that this is in 2.5 years and 100 looks, this is the only group I think that can get it done.
Thank you. I think that, Mr. Strickey, I think that might kind of sum up our case. Chuck, do you have anything else you want to add? You are the boss, and so you get the last word.
Yeah, I'm super excited to get back in the community. When I say get back in the community, we started 24 years ago. It's crazy, almost 25 years ago in Oakley, and our team has been slowly growing downtown at the corner of 3rd and Main for that period of time. We have recently been displaced and we're in temporary offices in Norwood. So one of my goals with the new move for the office was to be near one of our locations. And we have locations that are in Clifton and Kenwood, and we could move to Norwood, but realistically, I think it would be awesome for us to be that close to our original location that opened 24 years ago. It will unite our team from the office and our marketing team, our HR, our finance teams to be in there and then be able to walk over and stop in the original store, really take part in some of the operations and understand it better. We've kind of been office on an island, and then operations. We have 24 locations throughout the country. So super excited to get in there, be part of the Oakley community, and love the building, love the neighborhood, and are really excited to get in there. So, that's kind of my deal, and why we want to be there versus just looking for another spot downtown or such.
Can I make a comment, Mr. Sturkey?
Are you a part of the, actually, I don't think so. You'll have an opportunity in just a minute. I actually feel like
That's fine, because I'm on vacation in Florida, and I've got a tight timeline here. I've got a 4 o'clock, but go ahead with the protocol.
Sure. Just give me 1 minute. Mr. Tepe, do you guys have anything further? That sounded like closing of your opening there.
No, sir. We're good for now.
Okay, great. Yes, we're going to transition to public comment right now. And Mr. Misla, I'll go ahead with your time restrictions and give you an opportunity to go ahead and start.
Thank you.
So what would you like to tell me?
Thank you. Sorry about that interruption. We have an office in Oakley too, on Madison and Drake, and we own several Skyline locations, one of them in Oakley as well. And 2 comments. One, I think everyone's spot on. This is a unique property that requires a very light user. So when I hear that it's office with supplemental parking, no nights, little weekend demands, I think that's about as good as we're going to get with this piece of property. And it's been vacant for a long time. It's a beautiful building, but it's going to take a special user there. And I think Dewey's accomplishes that. And, just as being in Oakley for so long, we don't like to see vacant buildings, and particularly next to bars and everything. And sometimes that parking lot's a mess in the mornings. You've got kids in the neighborhood at the bar. So we're really excited about the opportunity of Dewey's office coming in there and bringing some spirit and value to the Oakley community. That's what I wanted to add. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Misla, and feel free to drop off whenever you need to, or stay as long as you would like.
Thank you.
I'm again just going to go by the orientation of my screen here. So, Mindy Fremer, what would you like to tell me?
I would like to also support the idea of having this building used in the way it's being proposed, because as I know, I'm the neighbor right adjoining their parking lot, or our parking lot. I'm in the old Fifth Third Bank building. Chris has tried really hard to rent or sell this property, and I cannot think of another use that could be better than what is being proposed. And the fact that they have their own additional parking, to me, it's a no-brainer. Otherwise, the property is just going to sit vacant for a long time.
Okay.
That's all I have to say.
All right. Thank you very much for your testimony. Thank you for being here. All right. Kay Eby. Is it?
Yes, we have the parking space next to their building. And our concern was having people park there all day if it were employees, because we have 2 buildings occupied, and one has a lot of employees now as well. And then they have employees that come and go. So that was our concern, but it sounds like you've met everything with the parking off lot. And that was our big concern. So I'm for it if they got all that parking. That's great.
Okay. And Ms. Eby, just to be certain, when you say you had parking next door, you're saying next door to the subject property?
Yes.
3061. Okay.
We're at 3057, 3053, 3057. And we have a bar in one of the buildings, and they mostly are at night, but the other building is occupied by people, and they have grown, and they have 12 to 13 permanent employees now, plus people that come and go constantly to see them. So our concern was making sure the space is available for them. So, and even though the bar is not only open mostly at night, it is, they have people there starting at 11 o'clock during the day that are there and need 2 or 3 or 4 parking places, plus anybody that would happen to come. So I think this is good. It's a good solution.
Okay. Thank you very much for your testimony, and thank you for being here. All right. Heath, I think you were with the Dewey's group, right? Just want to make sure.
That's correct.
Okay. All right, great. I think that's all the public comment portion. Mr. Tepe, I assume you don't want to cross-examine any of the members of the public based on those comments. If you'd like to ask them any questions, you can. Otherwise, you can sort of, well, I'm sorry, Wes, did you want to add anything to your staff report?
Hi, David. I just want to highlight that the zoning code allows for the remote parking within the 600 feet distance. And so this is just beyond that, you know, it seems like a reasonable request. The Dewey's restaurant site has excess space, as I've outlined in the report. And also that there doesn't appear to be any negative impacts on the public or any, you know, abutting property owners and such for the, you know, of this proposal. So, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Wes. Thanks for your staff report. Okay, Mr. Tepe, any questions of anyone that's testified so far? If not, you can, I think, move into any closing remarks you'd like to offer.
No, sir, no questions for everybody. Thank you for your time and attention. I don't have much by way of a closing. I think it's a fairly straightforward request. We're asking for 12 steps or roughly 25 feet to utilize parking that is not needed to service the existing restaurant in those buildings. We can put some life into an office building and lighten up that area. And by all accounts, it sounds like everybody online here is in favor of it. We ask that you give strong consideration for approval.
Okay. All right. I think we'll leave it at that. Thank you all again for being here and for your testimony. I'm required to technically do a site visit. Like I said, I'm familiar with the area. I used to live close by, but I need to technically do a site visit before I make a formal decision. Once I do that, I type up the decision, put it in writing, put it into a PDF, and I email it to everybody who's in this hearing. So you all will have my decision just moments after it's complete. Assuming it's approved, you can then start working with Mr. Munzel on the necessary permitting. He will get my decision at the exact same moment as you do, and vice versa. And so, again, as soon as you have that, you can start working with him on necessary permitting if it is in fact approved. It usually takes about 2 weeks. I'll do everything I can to expedite this for you guys and get a decision to you as quickly as possible. If in the meantime you have any questions that come up, I'm happy to answer that from anyone who's in this hearing today, not just the applicants. But if you have questions, please feel free to email me. My email address is on the screen there under my face. I will caution that I can't take any additional testimony. So if you think of something that you want to say, I can't really consider that. So please don't include any of that. And to the applicant and owners, if you guys would just like an update on the status of the decision or the timeline on the decision, please feel free to reach out to me and I'll provide that to you. Any other questions right now from anyone?
No,
Not at
sir.
all.
Okay, great.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all again. Have
Thank
a
you.
wonderful day. We are adjourned.
Thanks.